Thanks for coming again. Now, this is the second in a series of commentaries about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. The previous segment went from the first chapter from verse 1 through verse 17. So we're going to continue from that. I will just say that I've had some feedback from people already that they've enjoyed this, but it's going to get a little bit more intense in just a little bit. So I just wanted to give you forewarning. Okay. Okay, we talked about sleep. I'm just summarizing a little bit here. I'm trying to get back into the state. The consciousness of self-mastery, this is number 15, in one who is free from craving for objects seen or heard about, is non-attachment. Well, that's a sort of a funny way to talk about non-attachment until you consider the end. When you go to the state of Kevala, or independence, then there is a falling away of karma. And karma resides in your body as feelings. And the basis for your operation of their feelings is based on memory. So it's sort of going backwards a little bit to talk about this. Okay, the consciousness of self-mastery in one who is free from craving for objects seen or heard about is non-attachment. So that means that that person has that non-attachment already. Okay, here's an interesting statement. Okay, and I periodically tell people about that. Is it possible to be desirelessness or desireless? No, not really. Because if I don't have a desire to live, I'm going to stop eating and I'm pretty soon I'm going to be gone. So you have to, even a person who is realized, so this includes people like the Buddha. He went begging for alms, so he had a desire for food, so therefore he had at least one desire. Okay, so what is the state of self-realization then? The mind has desire, but are you the mind? No. When you come to the complete awareness that you are no longer the mind goes on and does its thing, and you stay right where you are. The mind could go in and out, it could traverse, okay, but you don't go anywhere. You're always there, you're watching the mind. In this classical interpretation from the agrarian community is that the self, the jiva, sits in a chariot, the body. The mind is a charioteer, and the senses are the horses. So the mind controls the senses, okay, so that controlling the senses is actually part of the second chapter of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and we'll talk about that later. The mind is separate from the jiva. In other words, the mind, you can be in a chariot, you can tell the mind to stop, and you as the passenger get out and get into another chariot. Okay? Now, and there are recorded instances of that. Not to go into that too much because I can't remember the name. See, this realized being makes mistakes. I asked Swami Kriyananda if Yogananda had a problem in making mistakes, and he said no. He would just go on. Okay, this was last December before he passed away, Kriyananda. So I was glad I had it. It's on video. You can hear me asking it. I also asked Kriyananda the last time I saw him, because, you know, there's this whole thing about reincarnation, and Yogananda is supposed to be the reincarnation of Arjuna, one of the heroes of the Mahabharata, and Krishna is the driver of the chariot. So they refer back to, this is where all this is coming from. And so Yogananda is Arjuna, Babaji is Krishna, I'm Balaram. This is a very funny inside joke. Anyway, so I asked Kriyananda, I said, are you Vidura? Or Sanjay? Really, I said, no, Sanjay. No, he said, no, I wasn't. I was a minor king who wasn't involved in the Mahabharata, in the Battle of Kurukshetra, and after the Battle of Kurukshetra, I went off and meditated in the forest. So that was all very interesting. For many number of reasons. So you learn these backstories as you go along. Anyway, okay. And here's I actually heard Satchidananda talk about, he used to come and give talks periodically. There is another aspect or benefit of non-attachment. It is mainly a person with a detached mind who can do a job perfectly. As an example, the other day I received a letter from a disciple who runs one of my centers. Another yoga teacher visited his Integral Yoga Institute, IYI, and asked him, don't your students ask for something more? In my classes, if I don't teach something new, each class they say, what's this? We paid you and got this yesterday. You're teaching us the same thing today. Why should we pay more? Unless you give us something new, we won't pay you more. So this is the letter this guy wrote. So I carefully arrange my lessons in such a way that every day I can add something new so that I can ask for more money. But here I see the same old stuff every day and people coming more and more, and nobody seems to be disappointed. Then the teacher at that other IYI said, we don't sell yoga, we just teach for our joy. The people contribute as they want. There's no business here, but rather the heart is working. Probably in your case, you expect money, and so you are interested in teaching something new every time to get more people and more money. And that's funny, because Swami Satchidananda used to talk about that sometimes. He says, I come and people come and listen, and it's because we interact with each other and we have joy while we're doing it. That's why we do it. And you could see that with the people. They really had a good time. And that's really one of the results of becoming independent. You do things because you want to. You don't do it for exterior motives. You just do it because that's your nature and you want to act that way. Okay. 16. When there is non-thirst for even the gunas, the constituents of nature, due to realization of the Purusha, the true self. So when you come to know who you really are, that you're not the mind, you're not the body, that is supreme non-attachment. See that if you look at this from the standpoint of the law of attraction, what the statement should have really be is supreme freedom. Okay. You're not held by your desires. When you want something, that means that you have to meet a certain condition in order to get that thing. If you want to see a 3D movie, you have to get in your car and go to the theater where they have the 3D. Otherwise, your desire is frustrated. Okay. Okay, so in here, Satchidananda talks about samskars. Okay, so that there's this is all, the Yoga Sutras is all about mental stance. How you arrange your mind. So I was talking to Matt today, one of my students, and talking about you get control of the mind. No, it was Josh I was talking to. You get control of the mind. And you can tell your mind to entertain a thought or not. Now that's power. See, and you go listen to people that talk about self-realization and all this other stuff, but they're not talking about the nitty-gritty of what you have to do with the mind. Yeah. This is my video. I can do whatever I like. Okay. Okay, so now here 17, he says, Samprajatna Samadhi with distinctions. In other words, your mind is not completely free of everything. So it's accompanied by reasoning, reflecting, rejoicing, and pure I-amness. And the first stages of this, of the I-amness, okay, is exactly what the Vipassana meditation is supposed to teach you. Okay, so they say that's a type of samadhi. Okay, well, but then they tend to say, oh, okay, I've got samadhi now. I don't need to go any further. Well, that's not true, because what happens is they relax their guard a little bit, and all of a sudden they're hurting because of some desire that they couldn't fulfill. Couldn't be a professor, couldn't do this, couldn't do that. Yeah. Okay. But yes, this is an achievement. Okay. We're in the first chapter, number 17. Shows you how far you have to go. Okay, here's another type of samadhi that he's going to talk about that's present in university culture. You go to university, you learn to go into this type of samadhi. Knowing this, we can easily see that scientists who probed the matter discovered atomic energy were practicing Samakara Samadhi. They were practical and wanted to know. They focused their entire minds on that. Okay? And even that small particle of matter revealed itself. In getting the knowledge, we gain power over the atom. So by having this type of samadhi, we are able to know all about atomic energy. Now he goes on to say in the book, okay, well, but that power can be misused. And so that's why we had the whole thing with the Cold War. We didn't dare attack each other because we would wipe out all of humanity, it was feared. And they actually did some calculations and said, oh, well, it's only going to take 3,600 bombs. Well, one side had 3,600 bombs. Okay, so he's talking about going further on in samadhi. Further on, we go into still subtler one, in which even the discrimination or reflection. Okay, so here's a samadhi with reflection. There's another one where you don't even have the reflection. Okay, and this is kind of a slippery slope. Let me give you some of the rules that they bring up. Well, I'm making this long so that all the people that haven't got an interest will drop off. I'm going to have some really interesting insights later on. But see, this is like a university course. You sort of have to put up with all the crap before you get to the good stuff. Okay. You don't use the intellect here. Okay, so when you go into one of the first stages of real samadhi, samadhi is characterized by the definition of samadhi is there's an observer. There's a process of observing, and this process of observing is directly associated with the mind, and there's the object that you're observing. In samadhi, the object and the thing observed become one and the same. So samadhi is really a type of samyana, which we'll talk about later, in which the observer, the jiva, is observing itself. And so when you do that, the mind, as the observer and the object, the jiva, become inseparable. So right now, if you're in your ordinary consciousness, who you are is some distance away from observing who you are. And that's why Ramana Maharshi has his Who Am I inquiry. Okay, so we're going to go into another type of samadhi, and then there's no reflection. The mind doesn't reflect back. Okay, so you and the thing become much closer. The mind is still present. Then there's another state where the mind disappears, and you are just that thing. Okay. This is number 18 now. By the firmly convinced practice of the complete cessation of the mental modifications. Aha! So now we're seeing it. The impressions only remain. So this means the samskaras. Okay, so you can still have a type of samadhi and still have the underlying samskaras are considered, the mind is considered an ocean, or the waves coming up on the ocean. And when you see the waves break on the seashore, they break where there's a sandbar underneath the waves, a higher level. Okay, the water becomes shallower and the waves break there. So those are called samskaras. So what that means is, if you just look at the mind, the things that come up unbidden are due to past impressions. Okay, so you could have a type of samadhi where there's not even these impressions. Okay, by the further convinced practice of the complete cessation of the mental modifications, the impressions only remain the samskaras. This is the other samadhi. The asamprajnana, when you have an a in front, that means without. So without the distinguishing marks. Okay, samskaras are still there, but other things are gone. Okay. So here's what Swami Satchidananda does. Samprajnana samadhi, the very seats can still come into the conscious mind when the proper opportunity is given and pull you into worldly experience. Okay. Number 19. Those who merely leave their physical bodies and attain the state of celestial deities, or those who get merged in nature, have rebirth. So those samskaras pull you back. You come back here to deal with your samskaras in some way if you're an advanced yogi. Okay, here's what Swami Satchidananda does. Temporarily they have dropped out of nature, but get to the final degree, they have to enter the university again. Okay, so you've gone in, you got your master's degree, you still need to do the PhD work. Prakriti, he says, is that university. You go to a certain point and get into a higher abode and control nature. Oh, he just slips these things in sideways. Okay, so control of your environment is implied by the state of absoluteness or freedom. Number 20. So Patanjali says, okay, so we're talking about getting that state of samadhi. To the others, this asamprajnana samadhi could come through faith, strength, memory, contemplation, or by the Spirit. He's just talking about the different ways you can get into that state. Okay, still remember, absolute freedom is beyond this. In Vasishtha's yoga, they talk about all these different states. Number 21, to the keen intent practitioner, this samadhi comes very quickly. Okay, especially if you had it in a past life, and I have a video for you to go and see if you've had that past life experience of samadhi. The time necessary for success further depends on whether the practice is mild, medium, or intense. Yes, that's entirely true. And people can go from mild to medium and then to intense very quickly, because all of a sudden they realize this is going to do it. Or 23, or samadhi is attained, so in parentheses, is attained by devotion with total dedication to God. All you really need to do is to see God everywhere. Yeah, so if you can do that right now, no need for anything else. But, okay, that means that I would be appearing as God, and your environment around you would be appearing as God. Well, do a check. Is that true? Okay. Well, I do see everything as God. I see that God is manifested as His camera. Okay, and I know that you're behind the camera. That's why I'm looking at you. So this is the first mention of God, even though it was indirectly mentioned in the very first sutra. Isvara is the supreme Purusha, unaffected by any afflictions, actions, fruits of actions, or any impressions of desires. So there's a guy out there that's created this whole thing, and this is his state. Okay? So whether something happens, he does something, and something happens, well, he just does it again, whatever. He makes choices. But he has no desire behind them. The choices are flowing out spontaneously. This means he has no desire, so he has no action and no need to reap the fruits of action. Then what is he? Oh, wow. Number 25. In him is the complete manifestation of the seed of omniscience to know everything. And that's one of the characteristics of a Jiva Mukta. This is the guy that knows where to go get the answers. So does he have the seed of omniscience? Oh yeah. Better believe it. The cosmic knowledge is called the Supreme Soul, or Purusha. So the Purusha knows everything. We have inside us something that is identical to the Purusha. So this is beyond the mind itself, which has limited knowledge. This is an idea, affinity applied to knowledge. 26. Unconditioned by time, he is the teacher of even the most ancient teachers. So this is where the first time you see the idea of a lineage. And this is the power of the lineage. Okay. And it makes sense when the mind thinks about this. That everybody inside is identical to Purusha. When you take away all the outside coverings of yourself, all that remains is the Purusha. So in some way, in the lineage, my Purusha is exactly identical to Satchidananda's Purusha, whose Purusha is exactly identical to Shivananda's, and so forth, and so on. And so that when you go into the state of the Jiva Mukta, that connection is always there. Because you've taken everything away. That's all. That's what self-realization really means. You take away all the stuff that isn't you. That's the Again, Ramana Maharshi's, who am I? Well, I'm not my hand, I'm not my head, I'm not my body, I'm not my mind. Who are you? I am that infinite being that is everything. The word expressive, okay, this is an interesting use of language, is the mystic sound Om. And has a note. Om is God's name as well as form. Well, that's interesting because they have a saying in Sanskrit that the name is the form. So you take a mantra and it has the name of God, so eventually it means that you must become, by the name, vibrating in you. It makes everything vibrate as the essence of that mantra. Just like a seed of an apple is identical to the apple tree given enough time that the DNA expresses. Identical. Okay, so you plant a bunch of trees, and when all the trees grow up, they're all apple trees, aren't they? So that's the idea of identical. Now the DNA may be slightly different, but the perfect ideal is that the seed is the tree after all the modifications due to time. And here's what he says. The name and form of a thing are inseparable. You can't take them apart. Okay. 29. So somehow, 29, okay, says, from this practice all the obstacles disappear and simultaneously dawns knowledge of the inner self. Okay, well, there's a couple of pages here. Oh, 28, we missed it. Okay, here, 28. To repeat it with reflection upon its meaning is an aid. So then you go to 29. From this practice all the obstacles disappear and simultaneously dawns knowledge of the inner self. So the Om and knowledge of the inner self are connected, just like a seed is connected to the apple tree by time. Okay, so this is the practice, and mantra repetition is part of that practice. There's other parts, we'll talk about it. 30. So you know what to do. Let's talk about obstructions and obstacles to that success. Disease, dullness, doubt, carelessness, laziness, sensuality, false perception, failure to reach firm ground and slipping from the ground gained. So this is showing that there's a goal, you can go along towards the goal, and here are the things that prevent you from reaching that goal. These distractions of the mind stuff, so these are all part and parcel of the mind. Disease, you would think that would be, but it affects your mind. There are people that are able to overcome even diseases. Okay, failure to reach firm ground. Firm ground means you understand the path you have to tread, you're walking along it, and it's firm ground, and you know that if you keep on going, you're going to reach the goal. Whereas if you get in quicksand, you don't know whether the next step you're going to go down even further. Number 31, accompaniments to the mental distractions include distress, despair, trembling of the body, and disturbed breathing. Disturbed breathing. Yeah, so you can actually have a number of these things when your goal is being frustrated. So this is how you know that you're being frustrated. This is the accompaniment. These are the singles if you don't even know what your mind is like. So he's trying to give you some way to gauge how you're going. The practice 32, the practice of concentration on a single subject or the use of one technique. So it doesn't really matter. The idea behind this is that the mind gets trained by practice. And they give an image of an elephant. When they capture a wild elephant, they put a huge chain to a huge log that they put in the ground many feet down, and they clamp a clamp on the elephant's leg that he can't break. After a couple of weeks, the elephant has given up, and they put a smaller clamp and a smaller chain. And then after a few weeks more, they put another rope, and they tie him to a smaller post. Then he could easily pull up if he wanted to, but by that time, he's been trained. So this is training the mind, and I have a video on Trodic. You can go look at that. By the way, last time I looked, it had 63,000 hits. Anything can take you to the goal, because you are not concentrating on the object for the sake of the object, but for the sake of your goal. You want to train the mind. So he's talking about making the mind one-pointed. That's what this is talking about. And then he's going to apply this to the mantra that you were talking about. And so then things start to come up. It's like cleaning an attic. You start to move things out, you start to sweep the floor, dust comes up. Everything seems to be worse than it was before, but it's all due to your goal and your desire to make order out of chaos. So this will naturally happen. Okay, now so he's going to give you some techniques, Patanjali is, to deal with your environment before you get realized. Here's one thing. Cultivating, number 33, cultivating attitudes of friendliness towards the happy, compassion for the unhappy, delight in the virtuous, and disregard towards the wicked. Well, that's not always true. And this is the whole idea of turning the other cheek, just ignoring people. And this was the whole idea behind Gandhi's thing. Well, that certainly is a type of way to deal with those issues, but someone said, well, if the Germans had been confronted by Gandhi, they would have stuck him in the gas chamber, and that would have been it. Okay. Cultivating attitudes of friendliness towards the happy. So when somebody's happy, you should be friendly towards them, because that's a sign of God smiling on them. No matter what they've done, if they're happy, because God has rewarded them. Hard to think. But that's true. Nobody's completely bad, completely good. Compassion for the unhappy. You may not be able to change a person to be happy, but you certainly would be sympathetic that his mind is bothered. Delight in the virtuous. Oh, this is great. Okay. and disregard for the wicked. These are the 4 keys to happiness with people. All you have to do is determine that people are in one of those 4 states, and you bring out the proper key. And people will reward you for that. When you see a happy person, use the friendliness key. Why should Patanjali say this? Because even 4,000 years ago, there must have been people who were not happy at seeing others happy. Okay, so there's a wrong way and a right way to deal with people. Okay, 34. Very first mention of pranayama. Such a big deal. Or that calm is retained. So which calm of this are they talking about? The calmness of the mind. Is retained by the cold and controlled exhalation or retention of the breath. Okay. Well, we're sort of halfway, 2/3 of the way through the first book. I think I'm going to stop there. Okay? Thank you for coming. I hope I didn't drag this out for you too much, but there it is. Thank you.